Hello, my name is Paul Jones, author of Concerning a Nation and several videos about errors in Bible prophecy. There's an organisation in the US called Operation Exodus. It's a Christian organisation which aims to help American Jews make the Aliyah back to Israel. I'm sure it's run by fine and upstanding Christians who do godly and diligent work. However, the title does seem to me to be a bit of a misnomer. Operation Microscopic Trickle might be nearer the point. The number of Jews in the US remains at about 5.5 million. Now, with 14 million Jews around the world, and that is a very conservative estimate, the vast majority of non-Israeli Jews live in America. And although figures are not exact, there are approximately another 375,000 Jews in Canada, nearly 6 million. And they don't appear to be going anywhere. The number of French and British Jews who emigrated to Israel experienced an increase a few years ago owing to nasty attacks driven by Muslims, but emigration has now started to decline. How soon they forget. The media loves to use the word exodus. Did you know that there is actually a statistical definition of an exodus in Israel? It's 30%. There are 400,000 Jews in France. An exodus would have to be 120,000. But in 2016 and 2017 the figures began to decline, with 3,500 in the latter year. That's actually less than 1%, and many of them come back. In the first half of this year, 16,000 Jews roughly made the return. That's an unusually high figure caused by a Russian influx. Let's assume though that it's normal and that the whole year would see 32,000 Jews returning. Over 10 years that would mean 320,000 going home. To get only 3.2 million back would take 100 years. To get them all back, well over 200. God is very patient, but I think his patience is running out. Watching videos of people making the Aliyah can be a very moving experience, but the fact is that most of them are not going to go unless they have to. The vast majority who went to Israel in the past 30 years came from regions of the former Soviet Union. Economic collapse and the rise of some rather inhospitable governments have sped them on their way. Some seem to have a very tenuous connection to Jewishness. There are actually only two reasons which move Jews home in large numbers. Except in rare cases, such as the Indian Jews of Cochin, it is either persecution or economic collapse. In 1949, 250,000 Jews came to Israel. They came with nothing from North Africa and Arab countries, mainly because of persecution at a time when Israel was so poor there was widespread rationing. But they were successfully absorbed. In 1970 the law was changed in Israel so that anyone who had one Jewish grandparent who was also married to a Gentile could make the return. This was because immigration was slow and Arab birth rates were high. The Israeli government wanted to preserve the Jewish character of the state. This change was insanely counterproductive since it actually threatened the racial integrity of the nation. What Israel needs is real Jews to return in significant numbers, and someone needs to tell them that. There is today a sense of almost obsequiousness in Christian attitudes to the diaspora and to Israel. The recreation of the Jewish homeland was an amazing miracle of God, but the reluctance of the chosen people to return is also a vindication of the Bible's description of them as a stubborn and stiff-necked people. Every time there's an increase in anti-Jewish attacks, there's a slight increase in emigration to Israel, but it's nothing and then it falls away, and as I've stated, many of them often come back to their original countries or move to the USA. The process has been going on for 140 years since God called the Aliyah, and yet most Jews still live outside Israel. Many American Christians often give money to support the process of repatriation, and I often wonder why. In the Forbes top 100 billionaires list there are 30 Jews. In the top 400 there are 139. And here is a staggering statistic for you. 9 of the richest Jews in the world are worth more than the entire GDP of Israel, which is 350 billion. Some of these billionaires support Israel, but many of their donations are very small, tax exempt, and often wasted on political parties, foundations and think tanks. It would only take a fifth of that $350 billion to give every Jew in America, Canada, France and the UK $10,000 to return to Israel. Instead, billionaires like Zuckerberg seem to be indifferent to the Jewish state, while George Soros is actively hostile. Jews are very comfortable in the West, especially in America and Canada. Well, of course they are. They're smart and dynamic, they prosper. They're going to take a lot of shifting, but believe me, God will shift them. Attacks on Jews and synagogues are very unpleasant for the victims, but they're not going to send the Jews back home any more than a shooting in a black church will send the blacks back to Africa. These attacks are little more than warning shots from the Lord. Their only purpose is to attract attention. More will come. When God called the Aliyah in the late 19th century, he naturally began in Russia, which at the time had the most Jews and was reasonably near to the Holy Land. The pogroms which erupted were at first small, but later gained in viciousness and intensity. It's worth remembering this when complacent Jewish voices say that things aren't that bad. Things are never that bad until they get that bad. If the Jews depart now, they will go in comfort and plenty, but I fear that many will wait until they are driven out with nothing. This would be very sad, and I want to make it very clear that no Christian should seek to add to the misery of the chosen people. Lift your hands against the Jews and you become an enemy of God. As I stated in my book, the period in which America was responsible for the welfare of Israel is over. Now you are just another debt-laden empire living on borrowed time. There were 3 struts to American blessedness. You have Christianity, but no longer of such a sort that impresses the Lord. You support Israel, but Israel has come of age and doesn't need you anymore. And you give a hospitable home to the Jews, but that obviously has to change. They must go back. That puts Americans in a very precarious position. Will the Jews go back because America collapses? Or will America collapse because she loses 6 million of her most brilliant people? Not a pleasant prospect. So what am I saying? Perhaps evangelicals need to change the dialogue they're having with the Jewish communities of North America. It must be made plain that they are living in disobedience and that any increases in anti-Jewish sentiment are only the smallest tip of God's sword. Or are relations only good between Jews and evangelicals when we flatter them? Thank you for watching and may God bless you. Please subscribe and also read my book Concerning a Nation. Thank you again.